All right, so like I said in the main headlines, we have two updates from two of metal's heavy hitters. Both of these are very highly anticipated for very different reasons, and we also, in major headlines, have the passing of a music legend that we must talk about. So let's get into music section. Welcome, nerds, to this week's edition of the music news. This is just a section, one section of six, count 'em, six other sections that we do over on the main channel in a show I like to call Week in Nerddom, where we talk about all of the nerdy things. You can find a link to that show down in the description or at the end of this video. Now let's talk about new music, touring information, and other generally interesting things to do with the music news. You thought I was going to say generally nerdy, didn't you? Okay, so like I said, we have two follow-ups to get to, the first of which, not going to beat around the bush, we're going straight into the As I Lay Dying stuff. We have update from Tim Lambesis finally has come out and addressed the losing of his band. It sounded like he took at least a little bit of responsibility for the situation, acknowledging that the environment has been toxic. I'm paraphrasing here. Acknowledging that the situation was less than stellar for the people involved, and also saying that he's going to try and create a better environment for the next lineup for the band, and going through and dropping the fact that throughout the life of this band, there have been over 20 members or something like that. And so just kind of, while almost like paying lip service to the idea that he's going to take responsibility for his actions, and then just saying this is the way it is kind of a little weird mixed message that seems like maybe he doesn't fully get the message, but I mean, it is his band, so you know, that is kind of what it is. One interesting note that he made in here is that the genesis for everyone else leaving was the rift between him and Phil Segroso. And Phil's decision, according to Tim Lambesis, Phil's decision to leave was the first one, and then everyone else chose to leave around him. But if you go back and look at the chain of events, like, that's not the way this played out. Even if it was a delayed announcement from Phil, he didn't delay the announcement about the announcement. So we had Ken Suzy and I'm gonna forget all the other guys' names, and I apologize. Ryan Neff, and the other drummer guy. We had all these guys announce that they were leaving, and then we got the announcement that we were going to hear some sort of information from Phil Segroso after all of those announcements were already made. So presumably when he made the announcement that he was going to decide his future with As I Lay Dying, presumably that was the point in which he decided, okay, I think I'm going to be leaving, officially decided it. Because maybe he led, I mean, and this is totally giving Tim the benefit of the doubt, but maybe he made some sort of statement, or he let it be known that he was very unhappy and was very likely going to be leaving the band. And that's what, you know, pushed these other guys to go, all right, if Phil's not here, I'm not here. That's the most generous interpretation of this. Otherwise, it just sounds like Tim's trying to CYA and obfuscate and divert attention to other things. And yeah, so it's a weird situation. And this is probably all we're ever going to get out of this situation. Maybe in a couple years, you'll hear one of the other guys who quit say a little bit more, kind of elaborate a little bit more on why this happened. But as it stands right now, we're probably, if something else comes out, we'll definitely be talking about it, but that's what we got, and that's probably all we're going to have to work with. So moving right along to our other big update follow-up this episode, and that is the Devildriver situation. We have Des Fafara, if you'll remember, had to cancel a couple of tours actually, because he's been going through, actually it was a tour and then a couple of festival dates, but still, because he had some mystery ailment. Well, he has come out and given us an update, and that update is, whatever it is, it's not gonna kill me. Still sounds like he's going through a battery of tests, and the doctors aren't fully sure what is going on with him, but It sounds like there's like an extreme case of vertigo and a couple other things that are kind of contributing to it that need to be taken care of. But he has reassured the fans that it's not going to be the end of Devildriver. It's not going to be the end of Cold Chamber. That was the tour that got canceled, was the Cold Chamber tour, not the Devildriver tour. But either way, it's fairly significant in that this is the first update we've got since he's been out of the hospital, basically. So pretty awesome. That is all we have though for that. So let's move into new music section. We have some interesting stuff going on for the new music videos. I wanted to, but I didn't get it in here. The Pet Sematary cover by Unto Others is worth a listen. So go check it out, but we're not going to get into that one necessarily. We are going to get into something rather similar. And our first actual piece for new music is Neon Nightmare has released another track called They Look Like Shadows. This is significant for a number of reasons. A, just because it's great. And like, if you are really trying to get that goth metal itch scratched, then damn if Neon Nightmare is not going to be the one to do it. But also, the record has come out. The full record called Faded Dream is out now, so you can go stream it, download it, buy it, whatever. Try and find a physical copy of it somewhere, which I don't know if those exist really. But we also get the reveal of who the hell is Neon Nightmare, because up until this point, it's kind of been, this is a really cool band that sounds a hell of a lot like Typo Negative, but like no announcement as to who's putting his music out aside from the $20 production that put up the money or is distributing the album, whatever the contract is. He credits them in all of the videos. It is one single guy. His name is Nate Garrett. You'll probably recognize that name if you are a fan of the band Spirit Adrift. Yeah, the $20 Spin. Yeah, that's the name of the company. But oh, so I guess I'm getting differing information because it sounds like the album is available for pre-order now, not exactly out now. But there is a link for the pre-order down in the description. Sorry, mixing my signals. But the song specifically, They Look Like Shadows. Again, more goth, Typo Negative stuff that is. While on one hand it is pretty derivative of the more gothy side of Typo, like Typo's not doing that anymore, so I'm okay with it. Like, a lot of people who are into this band are definitely okay with, like, it's obvious that he's doing a Peter Steele impression, but like, so it's good enough that like you can look past the derivative nature and just enjoy the really great music. So again, if you're looking to scratch that goth metal itch, Neon Nightmare's new track They Look Like Shadows is worth a listen 100%, and also pre-order the record, link in the description. Our next band for new music, our next track, I guess, is from a band called Molotov Solution. The name of the song is Devour the Children. So Molotov Solution was apparently a thing in the earlier days of the deathcore movement before I really got into it. Back in 2011 was the last time they released music, so it's been about 13 years. They have a new record coming out by the same name as this track, so this is the title track, Devour the Children. And this is, for being an OG band, like this is more of a prime example of how the genre shines. And like legitimately, this is an invigorating track. And it's not just a hammer over the head the whole time. It's not just bludgeoning you. There are a lot of really great dynamics here that really make this super interesting to listen to. So if you, I don't know, if you're into heavy music and you haven't really gotten into deathcore yet, this is a pretty great place to start. I would honestly suggest maybe Job for a Cowboy to begin with, but if you just want to jump into something right now that doesn't take a lot of parsing through, Molotov Solution is friggin' fantastic. And yeah, this new track, Devour the Children, very dark. The video, incredibly dark and kind of frightening, honestly. Plays out like a horror movie as well. This one more of a modern horror movie, where the Neon Nightmare track was much more of an 80s horror movie, but still, yeah. Deathcore is a genre that is definitely put some deep roots in, and these guys are part of that base stock, and for good reason. This is quality stuff. Go check it out. Switching gears a little bit, once again, we're going to an actual 80s band. The band is Extreme. You'll remember them for a number of reasons. The biggest of which, and kind of where we're going to draw a lot of parallels here, is for their song More Than Words. This new song is called Small Town Beautiful. There is another sound that these guys have. They are an 80s kind of glam, maybe not glam, but like that kind of 80s metal sound, the really polished, really verb heavy kind of sound. That is what Extreme did aside from More Than Words, which More Than Words was, I think, in the 90s even. So there's that. But this is, again, kind of revisiting the sound that they created with that More Than Words track and kind of trying to rekindle whatever magic they had. And it's gonna work. Like, this is a solidly written, very well produced track that when it gets played on radio, probably terrestrial radio considering the target audience, but when it gets played on the radio, everyone's gonna love it. I don't imagine this is going to drive a whole lot of album sales, but I don't know that Extreme really has crazy album sales these days anyway. But like, this might get them back into the modern conversation for kind of throwback rock stuff. A lot of the bands that start up in that kind of subgenre of heavy metal, rock, whatever, don't really last super long. See Hinder, see Theory for a Dead Man. That kind of stuff just doesn't really stick around, but Extreme's been around since the 80s, and they've been pretty good with their staying power. So yeah, definitely worth a listen. It's a really good ballad. Like, just when was the last time we got one of those? So go check out Small Town Beautiful from Extreme, with the caveat of it's from a metal band that it's not really a metal song. But anyway, let's move right along, shall we? And then jumping right back into the heavy stuff, we have a band that I hadn't heard of previously called No Cure. The track is called Don't Need Your Help. And these guys just signed to Sharptone Records. Sharptone Records is the same record label that has signed Bleeding Through, whom we've talked about a number of times on this channel. And these guys are at home at the shoulders of the dudes in Bleeding Through, because wow, this is a crushing track. This is so much fun. I don't even know where to start that we're going to be able to do in these real quick little segments that we do for these tracks, that like just all over the place with the good and the great. There are a couple of guest vocals on here from Jesse Clark from Wielded Steel and Nick Chance of Beautiful Child of God, but it runs this really interesting gamut of vocals, obviously because you have three different vocalists. You have the vocalist for the band No Cure, and then those other two we just listed, and just really prime example of kind of the way to do this. Like, it's not even modern metalcore. It's got this weird, it's not deathcore necessarily, it's somewhere around that area with a little bit of proper death metal thrown in. Like, this is hard to quantify in subgenre, but also great to listen to. So go check out No Cure, Don't Need Your Help. And then our final track for new music this week, we have a new band with very familiar faces, we'll say that. The name of the band is Paradise Slaves. The name of the track that they just released is A Fever to Defeat. You are going to recognize the voice on this track because it is, where's his name? Brock Lindau from 36 Crazy Fists, who apparently aren't around anymore, which kind of was news to me, but I guess I hadn't heard anything from him for a while, so it makes sense. Either way, Brock Lindau. And on guitars, you have the little brother of Joel Streutzel. Tyler Streutzel is his name. Joel Streutzel, if you don't know who that is, he is the lead guitar player, not the goofy one, but the lead guy who does a lot of the really tasty licks in Killswitch Engage. Every now and then has a crazy mane of hair or a giant beard, or I think right now he's got a mohawk. He's the other one. He's the quiet one in KSE. But Tyler, I guess, learns a thing or two from his brother, because there is some really interesting riffage going on in this track. The comparisons to 36 Crazy Fists are going to happen because that you have Brock. There's no way around that. But I think they end at the tone of his voice, because this is not hardcore. This is kind of like butt rock, instrumentally speaking, even though not really. It's just, I don't know, this is going to be for a small, no, how do we say this kindly? It's not going to be for general people who really like metalcore and hardcore, which is where Tyler's brother Joel comes from, and also where Brock Lindau comes from. It's not that sound. This is definitely a lighter metal sound. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to call it just hard rock, but it kind of straddles that line. And it's okay. It's definitely not what I was expecting when reading the players involved, because there's a couple other dudes from Diecast in here, which is Tyler's other band, I guess. And it's so that, again, you would expect something a little more hardcore, and this is a lot more melodic driven. This is just a lot different than you might be expecting, and for that reason, it is, again, a recommendation. I don't think we had a bad song in the new music this week, so that's what we got. Let's move into tours and festivals. So, lineups this week for tours and festivals. We have Judas Priest has announced a 12-date trek through Europe. It kicks off June 14th in Oslo, Norway, and concludes on July 20th in Oberhausen, Germany. If you go to their website, you can probably find ticket links, because I couldn't find a pre-sale, because usually pre-sales are only in the States. So, I mean, it is what it is, but go check out the Judas Priest website if you're looking for tickets, and that's the way you're going to find them. The link in the description is going to take you to the announcement for the tour that is not necessarily on the website. Next up on tours, we have another European tour, and it comes from Slipknot, continuing this throwback tour that it seems that they're doing. Hopefully they announce another American leg after the European leg. But we have June 4th in Sweden through June 28th in Spain, ends on Resurrection Fest in Spain on the 28th of June. So again, go to Slipknot's website in order to get tickets, because pre-sales don't really exist unless you're in the States. So our final one is kind of a festival of sorts. It's the Headbangers Boat Tour. 2025 lineup has been announced. You can find tickets if you follow the link in the description. A little bit expensive because it is a, cruise. So very noteworthy. Obviously it's Lamb of God, because that's who puts it on every year. But also Devildriver has signed on for this. So hopefully Dez has got all of his stuff figured out by then. And again, we have another lineup with Kublai on it, because these dudes are going everywhere. They're doing every show, and they're going to be on every tour. So yeah, Kublai Khan. We also have Fear Factory and Obituary and Clutch. Man, if I didn't think a cruise was a waste of time, I would be all over this. But if you don't agree with me on that waste of time comment, again, link in the description will take you to tickets. Go get yours, because this sells out every year. This is the third year they're doing it, and they sold out the last 2 years. So that is what we have for tours and festivals. Let's talk about some new music, shall we? Or I'm sorry, some regular ass news. We already did the new music. Regular ass news. This week we got to start with a really crummy piece, because Quincy Jones has passed. Quincy Jones is one of the most celebrated musicians in music, just throughout the however many, he's been around since the 60s, I want to say. He passed at the age of 91. The cause of his passing was not disclosed. He did die at his home in California, surrounded by family, and just a kind of a huge day in the music world, because a titan has been lost. So let's take a moment and do some remembrance of Quincy Jones.
How you doing? Snoop Dogg is here, and he'll be singing your music later. Is that right?
I saw him here.
Yeah.
He's St. Louis brother.
Is that right? How long have you known him?
Long time. Before electricity.
Wow, that is a long time.
No, I love Snoop Dogg. I used to live in St. Louis a little bit when I was young.
Yeah.
My grandmother, so he's a beautiful man.
Is that where you were born in St. Louis?
No, Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
And what did you do as a kid in Chicago?
My father was a carpenter for the most notorious black gangsters in Chicago, the Jones Boys. And I wanted to be a gangster all my life. All I saw were dead bodies and machine guns and stogies in the 30s.
Really?
Piles of money. All my life till I was 10 years old, you know.
Yeah.
And then Capone ran that gang out of town because they made too much money. And to Mexico, and my father got my brother out of the barber shop and took us on a trailway bus to the Northwest. And we broke in an army. We were gangsters out there too at 11 years old. Broke into an army, eating pies, and saw a piano, and I went back to that piano. I knew I'd do that the rest of my life.
Is that right?
It saved my
At
life.
11 years old.
It saved my
Okay,
life.
let's bring things up. We have a couple of quick regular-ass news pieces. Both of them are basically the same for different bands. The first band is Killswitch Engage, has announced that there will be a new song released at the end of this month, November 20th, so not quite the end, but pretty close. November 20th is going to be the release of a new Killswitch Engage song called The Consequence from their forthcoming record, which they haven't released the title for yet, but it is going to be out sometime in 2025. That's what we got for that piece. Next up is basically, again, the same thing, but for Shadows Fall this time, which I'm slightly more hyped for because it's been, what, almost a decade since we've got new Shadows Fall music. But we have new Shadows Fall. They have promised that they will be dropping a new track in December. No word yet on the progress of the record that they are also currently working on, but I'm sure once we get closer to that track, we'll have a little bit more information, so we'll talk about it then. But that's what we got for Shadows Fall. Let's move. We have another quick one, but for different reasons. Slipknot has supposedly redesigned their Tribal S logo, which is weird because if you're paying attention to metal music news, like a lot of coverage has been given recently to Sean and his remembrance of Joey and Paul, and that's significant because Joey is the one who designed the original Tribal S logo. So they have released this new logo that is not really an S and not really tribal, but also kind of like a small child was trying to do their interpretation of a Tribal S. It is a thing. So there are some people who are like, oh, I can't believe it. No, legit, this is something that they have released. However, there is a giant caveat to that, and that is it's not the new Tribal S design. This is only on a limited amount of merch, limited volume of merch even. They designed a couple of pieces in small number, very specifically with this weird S thing on the back. And the rest of the line that is not limited, that is going to continue for a while, has the traditional Tribal S on it. So they're not changing their logo, they're just experimenting with other things, and I don't know, they're probably going to be sitting on a backstock of things that have that weird S on it for a while because it hasn't been going over very well with the fans because it looks kind of silly. So that's what we got for that one. Our next one is, oh man, this is also kind of in the same vein as the Killswitch Engage and Shadows Fall thing, but to a different degree. Limp Bizkit has announced that has made it very, very clear. I don't know if that was necessarily an announcement, but has made it very clear through social media and things that they are currently in the studio working on a new record. And the biggest things coming from around that, I'm sorry, I'm totally stumbling over my words for this piece, but the most information around that status of them being in the studio has come from drummer John Otto, and I just want to take a moment and give shout out to Mr. John Otto, the human drum machine. Dude has lost a bunch of weight and is in incredible shape right now. The last time I saw them live, he was a bit of a chunker. He was chonky boy for sure, and now he looks like he did back in the early 2000s, and I am super happy for you, Mr. John Otto. I'm super happy that we're going to be getting new Limp Bizkit music less than a decade after the release of the last record, so there's that. But also props to John for doing the thing and getting healthy again. I'm super happy to see it. That means we're going to get many, many years of Limp Bizkit music, and I cannot wait. That, though, is what we have for our regular-ass news section. All right, nerds, we have a channel partner. It is Dubby. This is just a quick partner spot. Dubby, I consider myself a bit of an energy drink connoisseur, and Dubby does the thing. It is fairly low when compared to other energy drinks as far as caffeine content. Also no maltodextrin, just good things for your brain and stuff that legitimately does what every other energy drink claims to do, but doesn't necessarily pull off very well. Dubby does. So go follow the link in the description. You will get 10% off of your entire purchase at dubby.gg. You can use the code generally nerdy at checkout. If you don't want to click the link for whatever reason, you can still just use generally nerdy at checkout and you'll get your 10% off. Gives me a little bit of a kickback and you get some fantastic energy drink supplement things. I am super grateful to Dubby. I'm super grateful to you. Now let's get back to the show. So now that leaves only our suggestion for music this week. And the suggestion is not exactly new music. It is a podcast. And specifically, it is the Iron Never Lies podcast. This is a podcast that is put on by Brandon Chiappetti from Bleeding Through. He's the vocalist. He also runs a gym out in California, and he interviews other vocalists of other bands in like hardcore and metalcore bands. And it's just incredibly fascinating, intriguing, all of these wonderful things. Being a little bit fitness-minded myself, it's really kind of funny to critique their form when they are doing the lifting, because they do lift while they're doing the interviews. But like, it's really cool. It's a different kind of element for some of these vocalists or some of these musicians, I guess is more appropriate, that you wouldn't normally otherwise get. So the first episode is Matt, M Shadows, I'm sorry. M Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. Second episode is Jose Mangan, the metal ambassador from Sirius XM Radio. He's the lead DJ and program director for Liquid Metal and Octane. And also the third episode is Alex Varkatsis, formerly of Atreyu, now Dead Icarus. So you get some really interesting angles into what's going on behind the scenes with these guys. They are 6 episodes deep now. I am a couple episodes behind on it, but it is absolutely a fun listen, even if you're not watching the episodes, so you can critique them. Just listening to these interviews is incredibly informative and great if you are nerdy about the behind the scenes stuff with some of your favorite bands. So go check it out. That is your suggestion in music this week. That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.